And one of the things that I wanted to talk about in regards to this specific WrestleMania, and really, I guess all of the WrestleManias until WrestleMania 22, was their settings. So this one was in New York City, Madison Square Garden, of course, the world's most famous arena. And I mentioned WrestleMania 22 because if I'm not mistaken, Jim, that was the last one. That one was in Chicago. And that was the last WrestleMania that was held in a traditional arena, hockey, basketball arena. And ever since then, they've been in massive stadiums.
Yeah.
Now, WrestleMania had been in big stadiums before. WrestleMania 19, WrestleMania 18, 17
in the Astrodome.
WrestleMania 3. That's right. 1987 was also the Pontiac Silverdome. So it's not like that hadn't happened before. However, now it's exclusively there. And my big critique is that, for me, WrestleMania was a big event, not because of the number of fans who attended, not because of the space of the arena, because of the matches and the stories being told. So WrestleMania 20 is another great example of it's a great event. I would say it's a pretty great event, and it didn't happen in a big stadium. So, it saddens me to see the death of the traditional arena when it comes to the WWE nowadays.
Well, nowadays, it's about the money. It's about how many tickets can we sell. But yeah, with Madison Square Garden, like those MSG shows were always a big deal because, at least pre-renovation, they couldn't have the arena look like everybody else. It wasn't configured for it. So you had that little entranceway in the middle behind the ring instead of, the ramp off to the left or to the right in the Attitude Era.
That's right. In fact, even like Survivor Series 2002, there was no stage, right? It was just that little doorway.
Yeah. But when it came to WrestleMania 20, they went all out. They gave us that nice LED skyline. They had the actual floor just past the ramp broadcasting video. So it was animated, which nowadays is not a big deal. Back then, that was huge.
Yeah.
That was an innovation back then. It had this look, it had this feel, the crowds were so loud, and it was a subtle thing, and it shows you how damn good he was at his job. If you watch the beginning of that show, JR doesn't say a damn thing for about a minute. He waits to welcome the people, because you had to see this huge pan of the crowd and get all that noise as Drowning Pool is blaring through the speakers, to just take that in, as opposed to just... cut to the crowd in an immediate welcome everyone.
And see, that's a big moment in a small arena.
Yeah.
And yet is it the hypocrisy? What's the word I'm looking for? That, WWE, they claim that the MSG is their home. And, at least Vince McMahon did because of the roots of WWF in New York State.
Oh, yeah, his father, his grandfather, they both...
And now to turn their back on there because it only holds 16,000 people?
Here's the thing, and when you are a big, rich, eccentric billionaire, petty things become gigantic. And there was a whole issue between Madison Square Garden and Vince McMahon. He was upset they raised the rent for the shows, so he said, we're never going to do a show in your building again. And it's the same thing, it's like he had a falling out with Shane, and it's like, well, he's never going to get a pop on our show again as long as I'm in charge.
Yeah.
At some point, that loyalty ends up going one way. And when it stops going the other way and that first person feels jilted, the whole relationship is done. And Vince McMahon felt he was bigger than Madison Square Garden. And story of his life, the people he says he's grateful to, gets upset when he feels they're not grateful to them, even though they're just doing things the way they have to do it. He took it personally, and we all got to suffer because of it.
And I also think it's a misunderstanding of what makes WrestleMania special. Like I said, sure, being in front of 80,000 people... that's special in its own right. It is cool, and I'm not denying that. But, when you look at the great WrestleMania moments, again, professional wrestling is an art of athletic storytelling. So Steve Austin refusing to submit to Bret Hart. That's a great moment. Does it really matter if that happened in front of 80,000 people or 13,000 people?
Yeah, because the only thing you are going
It's
to
the
remember
moment
when
we'll
you
remember.
think back is his bloody face as he is just screaming in the sharpshooter. You're not thinking about the surroundings outside of the ring.
Exactly.
And that's something that if you look back and with shows in this time period, there's still the Kevin Dunn effect. You will still see matches where the camera's cutting every 2 seconds back then as well. But it was a lot more forgivable because you'll notice tight cuts because the important thing out there was the performer. Whereas now there is a heavy reliance on that hard camera, so you see the entire ring and you see the crowd around the show.
Mm-hmm. That's what it's about.
I don't want to focus on the crowd around the show. I remember getting pissed off at a Jericho match in AEW because I could still see the bat on the apron, and that bat was not Chekhov's gun. They didn't use it. Take it off the apron. It's a distraction now.
That's a great point. Absolutely. So it's almost as if the WWE trying to show off, right?
They're trying to show how big they are now.
Look how many people. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's missing the point of WrestleMania. Yes, it's a big show, but to me, and you remember that famous advertisement, I believe it was WrestleMania 19, Showcase of the Immortals, right? And there's a narrator that says, one day you will die.
Our bodies, though strong, can't defy time. One day, we will die.
It was an advertisement about WrestleMania 19, and it showed, Big Show and Kurt Angle and John Cena in the locker room, just preparing.
Yeah.
And the narrator was basically saying that, we live for moments like WrestleMania, the showcase of the immortals. It was the storytelling that makes one immortal at WrestleMania, not the size of the crowd, not the size of the arena.
Yeah.
Yes, some WrestleManias had been in big arenas. But again, as a fan, to me, I remember what was happening in the ring, not the size of the crowd.
It's not the size that counts, it's how you use it.
Hogan slamming Andre, I mean, that's a big deal. But again, that would have been a big deal even in a small arena. And it didn't have to be in the Silverdome.
Yeah.
93,000 people.
You didn't need 80,000 people to lose their minds when Elizabeth and Randy Savage reunited.
Yes.
You didn't need to have that large of a crowd because really the only people that mattered at that time were those two people.
Yeah. So I lament that this was now been happening, like I said, since WrestleMania 22. So 18 years now. It's been exclusively, extravagantly large football stadiums. And not only that, not only WrestleMania, that's become the case for Royal Rumble.
That's the Nick Khan effect.
Yeah.
Because Nick Khan was brought in to make money. And they realized all the pay-per-views are such a big deal that he thought, because there was that one where they had to double back with that Money in the Bank a couple years ago. I think it was last year, actually. But the idea is, the big pay-per-views will make it a giant stadium so more people can come out. The small pay-per-views, we will pick select venues that normally don't get shows so we can get that unique cultural impact like we got in Puerto Rico and Australia and soon Germany.
And France, too, actually. Backlash France, yeah.
They've set this whole concept on what shows warrant what kind of stadiums, and they're sticking with just that. But you're 100% right. It loses its value, just like, when there was 4 pay-per-views, they were much bigger deals. When it became 20, people didn't want to watch them.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the stadiums. If they're going to have a stadium show 8 times in a year, how special is it anymore?
Exactly. So I'm just looking here on the internet. The official attendance of WrestleMania 20 was an even 20,000.
20,000 to the dot.
Yeah.
This was before they had to publicly release the info.
Right.
Because Madison Square Garden had a seating capacity of like 13,800. Like, it was not 20 grand.
So they fit in an extra 7 somehow. They squeezed them in there.
They fit an extra 7 out of Vince's ass. They pulled whatever number they wanted to say, but it was probably, realistically, maybe 16K.
And they probably also count event staff, just to inflate their numbers.
Yep. The people
Catering
counting the parking attendants, security, 100%, reception.
So Madison Square Garden has not seen WrestleMania since then. And that's unfortunate. I mean, I think it would have been a very nice thing to have every 10 years at MSG. WrestleMania, the first one, WrestleMania 10, WrestleMania 20. It would have been, appropriate for it to be back for 30 and for 40.
And
but
that was a big deal a decade ago, too, that it wasn't at Madison Square Garden. Granted, I benefited from it because I attended. It was the first time I'd been in the United States. And I got to go to New Orleans, Louisiana, where the weather was perfect for my liking. Louisiana, but New Orleans especially, is a party city. And then you have tens of thousands of people coming specifically to party. Oh, man. It's amazing I remember any of it with how many hurricanes I drank. But it was a really, really fun week. But at the same time, if it was New York, it still would have been WrestleMania 30. It still would have been a gigantic show.
That's right. So yeah, I think looking back at the venue of WrestleMania 20 is also bittersweet. Let's be honest, Jim. There will never be WrestleMania at Madison Square Garden again.
No, not likely.
Because that's not the mentality that's going on right now, and I don't see that changing.
Well, let's just say when they do go back to New York, like they want to make their money, and they end up going to Newark, right?
Yeah.
What's the biggest?
In fact, actually,
MetLife in New Jersey.
Yes, that's right. They had a few WrestleManias in New York State afterwards, but not in Manhattan, right?
I had to do a quick search. Yeah, no, it wasn't Newark. It's East Rutherford. But like if they want to make money, because that's a capacity of 82,000, so they can say it was 101.
Yeah, and then they can build a giant replica Brooklyn Bridge, and see, we're still in New York.
And this is normally something that you bring up. I like when they make a custom set. When they have something big enough, like when they tried to do the gigantic pirate ship for Tampa. Of course, I was around for the roller coaster in Orlando. With Orlando, they had to make such a gigantic ramp that even The Undertaker came out through a trap door halfway through, because if he did his normal entrance, we would have been there until 7 in the morning. Oh boy. We'll talk about Taker a little later on, by the way. But yes, part of what made WrestleMania special and now retrospectively historic was the fact that it was in Madison Square Garden, and as we just said, that's not likely to happen again. No.